Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining me. We're going to allow everyone a few minutes to join from the waiting room. I see several people joining the webinar now. We'll get started in just a moment. So in the meantime, grab yourself a cup of coffee or your favorite tea. I love my tea from Lily Bird from Sherry Ann's, and we're going to get started in just a moment. Good morning. Okay, so it looks like most people have joined from the waiting room. So let's go ahead and get started. My name is Elaine with the Downtown Inc. and York County Economic Alliance. And I just want to welcome everyone to the August Business Series workshop. We're going to be talking about safety by design. I want to personally thank PNC for making the Business Series workshop possible and allowing us to bring this great content to you every month. PNC has been an ongoing sponsor of the Business Series. And if you missed any of the workshops this year, something nice that we've added that we're able to do since we're still virtual for now, you can see archived sessions from previous business series on the website, downtownyorkpa.com. Just go to For Merchants, click on business series, which I think is close to the top of the list, and you can view any of those previous workshops. Today, we will be doing our Zoom format as we normally do, where we'll have welcome remarks and presentations, and we're going to save time for questions at the end. So if you have questions while we're going along, please enter them into the chat or the Q&A. You don't have to wait till the end. We're actually going to try to take a pause because this is a really important topic as we're going along and answer some questions. So enter them as we continue the conversation, but just so you know that we're going to save time at the end for questions as well. And with that, I want to welcome Kimmy Lay. Kimmy is the Business Center Branch Manager with the West Manchester branch of PNC, and she's joining us this morning to offer some opening and welcome remarks. Good morning, Kimmy.
Good morning, Elaine. Thank you so much for the introduction. Happy Wednesday, everyone. Like Elaine said, I am Kimmy Lay. I'm the Branch Manager at the West Manchester branch at PNC. With being a part of the PNC retail banking team in York, I am especially proud to have PNC serve as a sponsor for the Small Business Series in partnership with the York County Economic Alliance and Downtown Inc. PNC is a Main Street bank, which means we combine the knowledge, insight, and strategy of a local banking team with the strength, resources, and technology of one of the country's largest diversified financial institutions. PNC's hyperlocal philosophy not only influences how we serve our clients, it also drives the way we show up for our communities where we live and work. Thank you so much for having me be a part of the conversation today. I look forward to it.
Yes, and thank you for joining us. We're so happy to be working directly with you, Kimmy. And again, thank you to PNC for your ongoing sponsorship of the business series. So August, right? It's still summer. I don't know about where you are, but it feels like the tropics outside. It's a little bit like soup, but it is still summer. But I have some breaking news, and some of you are going to love this and some of you are going to hate it. But I just heard this morning that Dunkin' Donuts is launching their pumpkin spice latte as of today. So you can get that as of today. As I said, some of you will love that information. Some of you will hate it, and some of you will hate me for talking about pumpkins in mid-August. But anyway, it is what it is. A reminder, September business series on September 15th, you may want to save the date for that. We'll be talking about supplier diversity, and we will be probably more in the fall mood at that point. So today's topic, as I mentioned, is a really important one, safety by design. And that encompasses a lot, right? Whether you're dealing with a challenging customer who's come into your shop, or looking for strategies for shoplifting prevention, or maybe you're just looking to create, a safe workspace through environmental design, such as things like lighting, we wanted to bring our partners from the York City Police Department here today to talk about this and cover kind of that broad spectrum. So joining us this morning, we have Sergeant Brian McBride. Sergeant McBride has been with the York City Police for 34 years. And as we were saying before we started, he's got some experience. He's seen some things. I'm sure he can give us some great pointers. Also joining us, Officer Michael Reiner. Officer Reiner, you may have seen with Victory, our new therapy dog downtown. So Officer Reinert is the canine therapy dog handler. He's also a homeless outreach officer, the mental health outreach officer, and the downtown officer that you will often see walking through the central business district. So that's a lot of hats, Officer Reinert. But I want to start by saying to both of you that I thank you for your partnership. You and I have had conversations really since I started with Downtown Inc. that have been so educational to me to understand and better respond and be a partner with our friends in law enforcement just in conversation. And so that's really what we want to do here today, right? Because something that we just talked about is that some of the issues around public safety and safety by design are complex issues. They're not simple issues, and they're not solutions that we can police our way out of, right? It's how we're going to work together with you and your expertise, and you sharing that information with us as business owners and downtown professionals and downtown residents, so we can come at this and work to create solutions together. So with that in mind, again, I would encourage everyone to be receptive to the conversation, and also please enter any comments or questions you have in chat and Q&A so that we make sure that it is indeed a dialogue. And with that, I will turn it over to you. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. I think we'll start with the safety part, and then maybe delve into the bigger issue of what's going on right now, which is dealing with a lot of persons in the downtown that have mental illness and or are homeless. It seems to be one of our biggest issues. Some of our issues with retail theft and other problems are associated with that group of individuals. So we'll start with a little bit from Sergeant McBride about some of the safety by design concepts that he's well versed in. And then we'll kind of delve in. I'm hoping to get some questions about specific things that the merchants are seeing, so we can kind of address specifically what their question might be. I'll turn it over to Sergeant McBride just to talk a little bit about safety by design information that he's well versed in.
Good morning, everybody. I'm not sure if I would call it well versed, but I have had some training in it. My name is Sergeant Blake McBride, not Brian, Blake, but Brian's pretty close. I've been with York City for just about 34 years now. Been in law enforcement for approximately 38 years. And I am what's known as a CPTED professional. I've earned my crime prevention through environmental design professional designation. Basically what that is being able to help business owners such as yourself to do things that can curtail crime from happening. Basically, when somebody is going to commit a crime, there's three things that they need. They need to have the desire to commit a crime, they need to have the ability to commit a crime, and they need to have the opportunity to commit a crime. What we're here to help you with is the opportunity. Obviously, we can't control somebody's desire to commit a crime. If they want to commit a crime and they have it in their mind that they're going to do that, that's what they're going to do. And if they have the ability, if I'm walking down the street and I decide that I want to steal a car, I may have the desire to do that and the car is there, but if I don't have the ability, if I don't know how to hotwire a car, obviously I'm not going to be able to steal the car. But if the keys are in the car. Now I have the ability, and I now have the opportunity to steal the car, which the owner of the car has just given me by leaving the keys in the car. With businesses, there are a lot of different concerns. Depends on the type of business you have. I'm assuming that most of the businesses here are some type of retail, which creates a whole new problem. Lighting, as it was mentioned earlier, lighting obviously is huge. But again, for a business that's open from 8 to 4 or 9 to 5, it may not be quite as huge of a deal. And you might want to concentrate on other aspects. If you have a retail establishment, encountering customers as they come into the store, greeting them, like you would find at many stores, like, welcome, is there anything I could help you with? That lets people know that there's somebody there and that they're being watched. It's a good, very polite way to make them feel welcome, but also let people know that hey, I'm here, keeping my eye on you, rather than just allowing somebody to walk in like a huge department store and they're not being greeted and they feel like they're not being watched. Another problem that I've seen with many businesses is advertising in the windows. Although that's maybe what you think is good for your business, depending on the type of advertising you have or the type of things that you have in your window, that could be detrimental. For example, you don't want to have a large poster blocking your window so nobody can see in and you can't see out, so you have no idea what's going on out on the street. I believe there was another issue with having merchandise in the windows. Having merchandise in the windows, obviously what you want is you're trying to attract customers. You want somebody to look and say, oh, look, that's cool, maybe I'll come back. But when the business is closed, those items, it may not be a bad idea to attempt to keep them to the back and bring them back out during the time when you're there to watch them. It's a very tricky situation because it depends on what you want and what your priorities are. It's very difficult to keep somebody from smashing a window if they want to smash a window.
That specific case that he's talking about just happened to be a high-end item that was in the front of the window, and someone took the opportunity when they saw it, smashed the window, and took that high item. So that can be one way to alleviate at least maybe a portion of it.
Right. So basically, what I'm here for is today, I think, is going to be to answer some of your specific questions that you may have, rather than me just ramble on, because I could probably ramble on and bore you to death for hours. But it's more important that you guys, that I answer what your concerns are, rather than me rambling off onto a tangent that nobody has any interest in.
And Sergeant McBride, we do have a couple of questions that are coming in response to some of the things that you've asked and just specific strategies. So as it relates to environmental design, let's start with the exterior. You mentioned the situation of somebody smashing the window to get a high-priced item. But of course, our merchants are putting those in the window because they know that those are highly desirable. And so that can bring people in from the street. So the question is, are there ways, or even maybe inexpensive ways, that they can use specific security measures like sensors or alarms, or maybe affix them so that they can continue to bring people in and people can see it, but still create some sort of safety around that? Also, would you recommend cameras on the exterior? And we have some conversations where people say, well, cameras only record the crime. They don't necessarily prevent the crime. Do you agree with that, or any suggestions you have? And then we also have some questions regarding the interior, but we'll start with exterior.
Well, cameras are obviously are always good. It's very difficult to determine how much crime cameras deter. Because what you have to think about is, again, we're back to desire, opportunity, and ability. How many times have you been sitting in your house watching the 6 o'clock news or the 10 o'clock news, and you saw police are looking for this person for a bank robbery? Well, everybody knows that banks have cameras all over the place, everywhere they go. From you walk in to the time that you get your money, I mean, the whole way through. So obviously that did not deter that person, because that person's desire for doing that was greater than their belief that they're going to get caught by doing that. Basically, to deter, cameras, I think, are going to target the people who maybe down on their luck. You know, they feel like they're between a rock and a hard place. They feel like they need to get something. So they just need that one little thing to get us through this month, or whatever the case may be. There could be numerous reasons why. And when they go to a business to maybe try and commit the crime, and they see the cameras, and then they think better of it. It's like, look, I'm not a bad person. I'm a good person. You know, this isn't me. You know, I was desperate. Those are the people that it's going to deter. And how do we gauge that? How do we measure that?
In layman terms, I guess you could say it's going to deter the mostly honest people. You know, the person that's, and I think we both can probably attest to, I mean, a good percentage of the time, the individuals that are committing retail thefts or damaging property, there's generally speaking a fairly complex reason why they are doing that. It's not always as simple as, you know, I just want to steal that and that's it. You know, there's usually some complexities involved. So the whole camera thing is definitely, it's a good thing. It's just one piece of the puzzle. You know, obviously, especially if you have, you know, if you're talking in the downtown area, if you have a bunch of thefts going on or a bunch of damage, you know, there's been incidents like that where a bunch of businesses were damaged from one individual. It obviously would be really beneficial if you had a camera, because we ultimately can hopefully figure out who that is and stop it from continuing happening. So there's an obvious benefit to it, but it's not the only piece of the puzzle, I guess.
Correct.
Okay, great.
As far as the glass and the businesses, there are many different types of glass. But again, like you said, you know, you don't want to have to spend, you know, an arm and a leg to put in shatter resistant glass. You know, that makes it more difficult for somebody to get through. A simple solution would be like to have like if your door, your window, if you've got like a bay window, you know, put a security gate. It doesn't even have to be visible behind where they can't get into the store. And then if you have a high-end item, you know, move it back for the evening. That's the cheapest way, because all it is just a matter of moving it back. Again, there is shatter resistant glass. There are other manners in which you can protect it, but some of them are going to be costly. There's some windows out there that pretty much, you know, you could throw a cinder block from 5 feet away and it's not going to do anything. It's not going to really hurt the window, but they're expensive.
Right. So there may be expense associated with that, but from an insurance perspective, you may get benefits of that investment, because your insurer may see that as an investment that ultimately is going to save you from losing, high price merchandise at some point. And I think from the lighting perspective, a well-lit exterior and interior is always better, right? There's really no arguing that point, I would think. So you're looking at your exterior, you mentioned signage, not having signage in the front of your store that may, or decals or merchandising that may block the interior to the point where someone can't see if something is happening in your store. So there's a balance of merchandising it for aesthetics and also for safety by design, if I understood that correctly.
Yes, it's important to be able to see out if you're the business owner. It's also important for people on the outside to be able to see in, because not everybody that's walking by is a bad guy. So you want those extra eyes on the street, and sometimes that's hard for people to comprehend. I talk to people all the time who have like yards, and they have these large privacy fences. I try to explain to them that privacy fences they're great. They're great for your privacy, but if you think that it's actually adding to your safety and your security of your home, it's actually the exact opposite. If you think about it, once a bad guy gets on the other side of this 6-foot fence, now they have cover. The neighbors aren't going to see you. The neighbors that are looking out for each other, they're not going to know that there's actually somebody inside your yard because they can't see you. Can't see that person. So
and that touches back to the subject you were talking before with having too much stuff in your windows, like where you can't see in or see out. That can be a negative thing also, because again, you're not able to see what's coming or what's happening. Nobody's able to see what's happening inside.
That's a really great, I didn't think about that from the standpoint of security fences. And, sometimes in our beautiful spaces downtown, we can create courtyard spaces. And while aesthetically, it seems great, something to consider from the standpoint of safety. So we talked about exterior. Let's say, for example, someone does come into your store, and there are two different situations that I'd like to address. The first is a situation if someone comes in your store and they are shoplifting. What is the appropriate thing for the business owner to do? What is the right steps? Immediately calling 911, if you can take us through that.
That's kind of a loaded question to an extent because it's so situational. Obviously, we don't want a situation where every time someone sees something suspicious that they immediately call 911. It needs to be somewhat of a progressive thing that goes on. So when I say it really varies, shoplifting can happen, and what we see in the downtown quite frequently, unfortunately. We see a fair amount of it happening with homeless individuals and or persons with mental health, which is kind of my portion of this. And I think what I generally say to most of the merchants when I talk to them is, you're going to want to err on the side of safety when you're dealing with that type of individual. There's been some incidents that happen here where merchants have approached someone that was having some kind of problem in their particular business, and it didn't go so well. So, although, again, I'm not saying every single incident are you going to immediately call 911. Based on what's going on, for the majority of the time, that's probably the best way to go about it. I mean, if it's a general retail theft, you have someone come in, you see them pick an item up, see it on the camera. Quite oftentimes, merchants will see it on the camera because they suspect something's going on just by their body language, their demeanor. They're kind of just lurking around the store, but they're not, asking any questions. Just those things that you generally get a sense of. Most people have a sense that something's not right. And they'll go and look at the camera, and then they'll see that, oh, this person's stuck this in the pocket. It really, again, comes down to, are you comfortable approaching that person and saying, hey, did you stick something in your pocket? Because sometimes it can be resolved like that, and the person will, oh, I accidentally did it, or whatever excuse they use, and you can resolve it that way. And that really depends on what your policy is, because different businesses have different policies. Some places have policies where they don't approach them at all. And when you're talking about like some of the major businesses, for instance, Rite Aid, just to mention one, they don't approach people when they commit a retail theft. So they generally either call right away, or they will review the footage and then call after the fact. For us as the police, it helps us extremely if when it's going on, you would call us. So for instance, if the person leaves and leaves the area and we're not able to hopefully get there and stop the person, that definitely makes it a lot more difficult for us to find them. I mean, sometimes we can identify them, but we can't always identify them. So if we're called at the time when it's going on and we're able to get there while the person's either still there or in the general area, so we can stop them, hopefully find the merchandise on them. So kind of a progression again. The first component would be, what's going on with the person? Is this a person that's in some kind of crisis and they're stealing it? And again, you have to kind of use your senses for a lack of a better way to describe it. I mean, most human beings can sense if you're dealing with a person that's, for again, a lack of a better word, normal, or you're dealing with someone who's having some type of crisis, just don't know what it's about. You don't want to approach that person if it's not gonna, you're not gonna be able to do it safely. So again, the first step is, are you willing to go over and approach them, or is it safe to do so? That's okay if that's your policy to do that. Just talk to them about it. Tell them, hey, I think did you put something in your pocket? See where that goes. If it doesn't go well and you don't get it resolved, whatever way your policy is,
They become aggressive.
They become
just
aggressive.
Back off.
Back off. Obviously, for merchandise, it's not worth getting hurt. Okay? Nothing someone steals would be worth getting in a confrontation where you're hurt over that. And then obviously the next point would be to call 911. And again, based on your policy, if your policy is to let them out the door, let them go out the door. But again, the key point would be, the quicker you can call us to the scene, the better that chance we would have to resolve that, either by arrest and or whatever the store owner would like to have happen.
A lot of times businesses seem to get frustrated because if they do call, it seems like it takes a longer time than they think it should take for the police to respond.
Yes.
And after doing that a couple of times, then they decide, well, we're not going to call because they don't come right away anyway. And it's very difficult. It's very difficult to explain because people don't understand it. There's only so many officers that are there. It's not, officers are not responding because they don't want to. And they're not responding because they're tied up on other incidents, or they're short-staffed. There's unfortunately a bad accident somewhere that's taking up a lot of resources at that time. So just because if you call and they don't come immediately doesn't mean that they don't care or they're putting it on the back burner. It's you got to do it right away. It's very important, and I know it gets frustrating sometimes. It takes a long time for the officers to respond, but it's still important to call, get the description out there of the person that just left your shop. So we can actually be looking, because we may be going to another call, but we may, if we have the description, we can still be looking if we're going in that area.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I don't think everyone generally understands why that happens. And, we get sent to wherever we're going. So when a call comes out, let's say someone calls for a retail theft, if we're all tied up on something else, they're not going to rip us off of whatever else on and send us to that. When someone gets freed up from whatever they're doing, the next thing they would get would be whoever's available in that district would then get that call and we would go to it. So sometimes, you know, I mean, unfortunately, there's sometimes it may be hours till someone gets there. And again, you got to look at it from a priority standpoint. The calls are prioritized oftentimes too. Because if there's a retail theft sitting there where the suspect left 15 minutes ago, and then there's a vehicle accident, well, it's obvious which one's going to take priority, especially if someone's injured. So again, pointing out, don't get frustrated with it. Just keep doing the same process. Even if 5 times you call and it takes an hour for them, keep doing it that way because, you know, we just don't know where we're going to be at the time. But that's the best solution to try to get the person under arrest if that's what ultimately we're looking to do.
Thank you. And we have a couple of questions as follow-ups to that. So let's break these down for what could be potentially different situations. Someone asked, if I am understanding PA law correctly, if someone displays a weapon that a licensed carry individual can protect themselves and others. And I don't know, and of course, we're talking about an escalated situation there, and that may be too complex to answer, but the question seems to be specific around what is PA law around licensed carry individuals being able to protect themselves.
I can address that. This is something that a lot of people talk about and ask. And again, for most things with police and most things with the law, it's really situational. It's not cut and dry. It's not black and white, especially with concealed carry and self-defense. So the easiest way to break it down and simplest way is if you're in a situation where your life, so you can articulate that your life is threatened, okay? Eminent threat is a better way to describe it even, okay? So, and I'll break that down later. So eminent threat or someone else is an imminent threat of death or severe injury, okay? Those are the two key factors to protecting someone or yourself. The big key part to that, again, is the imminent nature, okay? So where people sometimes fail to understand it is if there's a situation where you can get away from the situation, okay? So let's say you're inside your business and someone has a knife, okay? But they're standing, you know, on the other side of the business, it's 50 feet away and all your customer, no one's around them and they're not necessarily threatening anyone, but they have a knife. That becomes a little bit iffy as to whether or not you can, you know, have a self-defense situation with a firearm. That's what we're talking about. We're talking the situation where there's a person, whether it's the shop owner that has the weapon and or another customer is about to get injured where it's severe injury and or death. That's the simplest way to describe it. Otherwise, you need to try to get away from the situation. So the best thing would be unless it's imminently going to happen, is to get out of the situation if you can. If there's no other option, then yes, you absolutely have the right to defend yourself or someone else. Okay. But the key again is if you can get away from that, you must get away from that under the law. If that makes sense.
Yes, that does make sense.
No, I mean, it's a good point. I mean, obviously you have the right to protect yourself. You have the right to protect others. Pennsylvania is one of the states in the United States that's an open carry. So people can, you know, if somebody has a handgun, they can unfortunately walk around like wide open if they want to on the street, as long as they're not creating a problem or creating
And to parlay off that, just another thing to talk about that we often get called for is if someone is walking around open carrying a firearm, this is the law, you absolutely have the right to do that. And quite frankly, I cannot even stop that person just for openly displaying a firearm. I mean, I would violate that person's rights if I stopped them just for that reason. So it is a little bit complicated for us, because sometimes people are in fear when you see someone walking around openly displaying a handgun, which it happens frequently. Right now, there's an individual walking around in the downtown, not the downtown per se, but in the city, who carries a shotgun around. That causes alarm all the time, but it is perfectly legal for that person to do that. Most people would think not, but we're an open carry state. You can carry a firearm open in public. So just to make everyone aware of that, you will sometimes. Now, where that changes is if your specific store, you don't want someone to come in there with a firearm, you do have the right as the owner of the store to say, I would not like you to be in here with that firearm. And at that point, what could happen, or what sometimes happens, is there is no violation of the law for being in your store with a firearm. Where the violation in the law would happen is if you have someone come in with a firearm and you ask them to leave because you don't want them there with a firearm, and they refuse to leave, you would call the police would come. Typically what we would do would be like, hey, you got to leave. If the person didn't want to leave and was being belligerent, then they would get arrested for trespassing. But there is no specific violation of the law. If you have your store posted, no firearm, and someone comes in with a firearm, what you have to do as a business owner is say, we need you to leave because we don't have a policy against firearms. They don't leave, then you call, never confront them, never, say, hey, I need you to leave. They won't leave, call 911, wait for us to get there to deal with it. That would be the best advice I could give.
And just so I'm clear, and that is a really important note. I hadn't thought about that, quite honestly, Officer Reiner, that you can ask someone to leave your store or your office. If maybe you have a professional services office and a client walks in and they are carrying a handgun or in their possession, you can ask them to leave. However, does it have to be posted somewhere, no firearms?
Well, it obviously helps, but
Okay, it's
just,
not required.
Just me verbally telling you that you have to leave. I mean, at that point, just them walking in isn't. You have to understand that's not a crime. So, even if you have it posted that we don't want firearms in the building, and somebody walks in, don't be upset if the police officer gets there and they don't just arrest them right away because of that. Right. At some point when you verbally tell them, look, you need to leave if they haven't continued on and they haven't gone anywhere. Usually that's the best solution is just have them leave if that's what it takes when the officer gets there. But because they're verbally being told that, if they refuse at that point, then yes, like Officer Reiner said, you would have a trespass violation because you've been asked to leave and you haven't. As a business owner, you have the right to refuse service, as long as it's not, based on the normal things that is against the law.
Race, sex, religious affiliation are the three things you can't exclude somebody from. Other than that,
if somebody comes in and they're acting disorderly, you have the right to refuse service to them. You have the right to not allow them into your store. Just like a restaurant or a bar, if somebody comes in and they're drunk and disorderly, they have the right to say, no, we're not serving you. You have to leave based on what they're seeing. So, you as a store owner, you do have the right to refuse service. Just it has to be for a legitimate reason.
And kind of parlaying off that subject too is, again, it goes back to what we talked before. If you approach someone because they're doing something you don't like and you want them to leave the store, and you say, obviously be polite, say, ma'am or sir, we don't like this activity happening in our store. Would you mind leaving, please? If they don't leave, when you take that nice tone with them and they start becoming belligerent, that's when you say, okay. If you really feel the situation is dangerous because this person's whatever acting bizarrely or they're drunk or whatever is going on, protect your customers, whoever's in there, take them maybe back to the side and call 911. Don't try to engage with someone who's become belligerent, because we've seen that go south, a number of times. We don't want that to happen. Protect your customers, call 911.
And I think that's a good segue, Officer Reiner, to another question that we have, which is, can you talk a little bit about some of the initiatives that the city has or is looking to put in place for people who are experiencing homelessness or who are experiencing mental health issues? Because as you said, we have had people in the downtown who've said that an individual has come into their business that look to be experiencing mental illness, and maybe they aren't able to have the kind of conversation to politely ask them to leave, the establishment. What is the city doing, or what's in place, or what resources are available that business owners and residents should know about for that population?
Okay. So this is a subject, I know we've talked about it quite a bit, and it's kind of a passionate subject for me because I've been dealing with this individual that we're talking about for many years, and the system as it stands right now is rather difficult to deal with a lot of these individuals. And I actually looked something up the other day, and I think I mentioned it. I might have mentioned it to you when I talked the other day, but I just wanted to point it out because it's directly related to what we're talking about. So the statistic I looked up the other day, in 1955, okay, in Pennsylvania, since 1955, 10 of our state hospitals have closed. All right. We at one time had 135 state hospitals. I think we currently have 35. So in 1955, on an average day, we had 41,000 persons with mental health issues housed in state hospitals. Okay. Today, we have 1,500. So that's a 96% decrease in the amount of individuals that are housed in mental health facilities. So what does that mean? That means that 96% decrease in general, it means most of those people are now out in public and we're dealing with them. Unfortunately, a lot of the individuals that we're talking about end up in homelessness. There's a lot of specific disorders that are going on. Specifically, the one I see the most, schizoaffective disorder or schizophrenia, which anyone who's dealt with someone with those disorders knows that they very oftentimes can be difficult. It does not mean that they're violent, by the way. I think that a lot of times people think of someone who's acting bizarrely, and when I say acting bizarrely, most people or most human beings who quote unquote have normal sensibility are able to get a sense that something's not right with someone. Okay? You start talking to them, you start getting a sense there's something going on. You might not know what, I don't always know what I'm talking to someone, but you get a sense that, okay, there's something happening with this person.
He says that about me all the time.
Right. And how do I now deal with this person? And it can be rather difficult at times. I will say this, having been doing this for quite a long time, most individuals, no matter what they have going on, if you treat them with respect, if you talk to them like a human being, even if they're not acting like other quote unquote normal human beings that you would experience, if you talk to them like a normal human being and you treat them with respect, you normally will get a good result out of that. Can't say that 100% of the time. It's so situational, but most of the time you will. I will caution you, however, though, going back to, we have had some incidents where someone tried to approach someone that had some mental illness going on, and it didn't end well. If you try to talk to someone and you get a sense of something going on and it's not going well, the obvious thing to do there is, again, back to what we were talking about, if someone had a weapon, same kind of situation. You have customers in the store, kind of gently get them, to safety and call 911. I'm not suggesting that every time you have an individual that's acting different or bizarrely that you call 911, but if that hair on the back of your neck is standing up because something's just not going right, they're acting so bizarrely and you feel your safety is threatened, that's when we want you to call 911 to let us come there. Most of our officers are pretty good at dealing with these types of individuals. And we can usually get a good result out of it. But it is complex right now. And you ask, what are we doing to try and mitigate some of these things? So there's a couple organizations that are out there right now. One that we work directly with is the Mission. Sometimes a good thing to do is like some of the businesses have these individuals coming in on a regular basis. They get to know them to an extent. You can always offer them, or at least offer them a location, especially when you get newer people in, offer them a location, which is the Mission. And if you don't know where that is, it's on the 300 block of West Market. You can direct them down there. The other one is Friends and Neighbors. That's a really great organization. That's a street level outreach. I don't know, Elaine, if you provided that, and I think that was in maybe one of your safety brochures that you put out.
I think that might be in one of the most recent ones. If we did not include Friends and Neighbors, we will certainly add that to our resources.
They're a great advocate. They really work hard at trying to deal with them. But you need to make an exit.
Yeah. I need to go. I'm sure that there may be some more questions for me. You feel free to contact me. My email is bmcbride@yorkcity.org. My phone number is 717-324-6522. Unfortunately, I do have to leave, but I welcome any questions that you have, and I'd be more than happy to help anybody with any issues that you may have as far as your environmental design or your security design.
Yes, and thanks, Sergeant Blake McBride. I apologize for that. Thank you for joining us. I know you have another appointment, but we really appreciate you making time to fit this in this morning for an important conversation. So, yes.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, you too.
I can still try to answer. I'm not as smart as him, but I'll try.
Well, as you were saying about resources and what the city is doing to work to try to have positive impact regarding those two populations, because these are people who are part of our community. So yes, so Friends and Neighbors, you mentioned the Mission. Any other resources, or is there anything that either people who are in a professional setting, whether you're a merchant or you're working in services, that they can offer to their employees as just resources, things that they should maybe read or to be.
In terms of what?
In terms of responding, as you said, how to respond to those populations, someone with mental illness, someone who's experiencing homelessness, they can certainly refer them and work with those organizations. I guess my question is, do those organizations, and likely they do, have resources for business owners and downtown professionals so they could say, these are some tips on how to work with people in our community?
I don't know with those two particular organizations if they do. That's something I could find out. I know they were working on. I know Robin, who is the director for Friends and Neighbors, they were working on coming up with a pamphlet that businesses could hand out to individuals to direct them to the best place for services and or places to, like for instance, some of the things that if you're unsheltered, there's some things that maybe some people don't think about. The unsheltered population, directing them to places where they can charge their phone, directing them to places where they can, I know we talked about this, go to the bathroom. That's a big subject that we're trying to work on right now, coming up with a solution for that problem. I know a lot of our businesses are seeing that happen, and that goes back to it's difficult because, you know, if you're a business in the downtown, do you necessarily want to allow someone who's, you know, not bathed in 10 days into your restroom in your business? So it's a really tough subject. We are trying to work on some solutions. We would love to have as much participation in that. And that's one of the ways we can help with this situation as a collaborative is if everyone at least attempts to try to be involved in some of these things. One of the best things I often talk about too is, you know, if you have a homeless individual, and I know a lot of these businesses in the downtown, they get to know these individuals because they're coming in, you know, daily. They might know them by name. It is beneficial to sometimes get to know them. And what I mean, you know, not necessarily on a personal level, but if every day this person's coming into your store or your shop or going by, and you know who they are and they know you, when you have a situation that might not be the most desirable, you will probably get a better result if they know who you are, or they, you know their name or they know your name. That's an individual thing, whether or not you want to get involved in that, but I know that does help. Some of the businesses that I talk to, they do that. And very oftentimes they're able to get a good result by knowing them, like saying, hey, can you not be here in the morning when my customers are coming in? Or, hey, can you not go to the bathroom beside my business? It's just one way out of a whole puzzle again to try and help that situation.
Yes. And so I think
I can't hear it.
we are running close to the end
You
of.
muted yourself, Elaine.
Am I muted? Can you hear me? I'm not on mute, so hopefully.
Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
There you go. Now I got it.
Okay. I was unmuted, but for some reason the volume wasn't working. So we are running close to the end of our time. A couple things that we wanted to do. We have the merchant safety tip sheet that you mentioned a little bit earlier, and it has contacts for some of the resources. So there's one that's dedicated to interior safety by design, one for exterior. If we have enough time, we're going to put those in the chat so that people can find them, but they're always on our website, downtownnewarkpa.com. I believe they're under the For Merchants section. And you can see all of the tip sheets for the year, including those on environmental design. Something else that you had mentioned, and I wanted to make sure people understood and are aware of a resource, which is they can have a safety design audit, correct, of their either business, their residents, and have someone from York City Police Department come out and give some of these tips specific to your place of business. Is that correct? And how do they go about doing
that? You can contact Blake, Sergeant McBride, and or the other person is Jackie Marrero, both in community services. I don't know if you have Jackie's.
We do. Jackie's information is in the merchant tip sheet, and I see that it was just loaded into the chat. So if you're interested in downloading that PDF and getting information for Jackie, that's in the document. Thank you. I haven't had an opportunity to meet with Jackie yet, but I certainly look forward to doing that. And also Crime Watch. Is that a resource as well that you would recommend for businesses just to know? Because we didn't really get into some of the other crime, violent crime, what's happening, but that is also a resource for businesses as well to be informed, correct?
Crime Watch would be a really good thing to download. You can load it on your phone, you can load it on your computer. I think there's like 3 or 4 different ways you can access it. I believe you have that also included in your
we do.
Tip sheet. Yeah, that's good because what that does is tells you what's going on specifically in the area. You not only load it for York City, but most of the agencies around us. So if you're not living in the city, it's also good in the sense that wherever you live, most of those agencies also are included in that. So you can kind of know what's going on wherever you're at in this general area. And most of that is going to be telling you about the serious stuff that's happening, not necessarily every single crime that's happening. You really don't want to know about every single crime, trust me, but it's going to tell you about the serious things that are happening that would be beneficial for you to know. Like, is there a string of robberies happening? Is there a bunch of break-ins happening? You know, is there a bunch of retail thefts happening in one area, or robberies? Or, you know, that's kind of information you're going to get on there, which obviously can be beneficial from a safety standpoint. So you know what's happening and what you have to do to be safer.
Right, right. So those are all great resources. Again, you can see the replay of this if you missed anything. It'll be on the website later today. Attendees will also receive a follow-up email with all the contact information that was mentioned and the public safety tip sheets. Again, we invite you to take advantage of those resources. You can find out how to get connected for a safety audit, to download the Crime Watch app. And we just thank you so much, Officer Reiner, for being a resource to us today, but just really being a constant in our community and a resource and a partner for all of our public safety. So thank you very much for your participation. And I thank PNC again for sponsoring the business series. Thank you, Kimmy, Lay. I look so forward to working with you in the future. And a couple quick reminders in the last few minutes that we have. Again, the next business series workshop is September 15th on supplier diversity. Also, tomorrow night is the DFA, the Downtown First Awards, where we celebrate all the amazing people who are putting downtown first and doing incredible things. And boy, don't we need to celebrate each other and our great city this year more than ever. There are tickets still available. So if you're interested in attending the DFAs tomorrow evening, you can find that on downtownyorkpa.com or on our Facebook page. There's a link, or just email me. I imagine you guys all know how to get in touch with me, info@downtownyorkpa.com. First Friday is coming up. We have grants that are available for fourth quarter. So if you're interested in applying for a First Friday grant, the deadline is August 30th. And lastly, we have new branded materials for First Friday. I know the First Friday flags that we've had have been around for years. Well, we have a refresh, newly branded flags and decals for your windows, and you can sign up to receive one of those free of charge, thanks to our sponsorship for First Friday through WellSpan Health. So with all of that, I know that was a lot of information. Check out the website for more details. Everyone have a great rest of your day, and thanks for joining me this morning. Bye-bye.